Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Creating Mental Wealth Show. Here's where we take the topic of mental illness and make a paradigm shift away from the stigma conversation, taboo conversations, and we create the prosperity around mental wealth. I'm Sherry James, and I'm your host. And today in studio, we have the Honorable Raymond Kemp Sr. Super excited to have you here. I cannot wait for this episode. I am just like over the top. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Rich. It's very much a pleasure to be here with you.
Awesome. So I know that your title is very long, and in the weeks that I've known you, I've messed it up a bunch of times. And so we're not going to do that today. So today, please do explain to our audience who you are and what you're doing.
Okay. My name is Raymond Kemp, and I have a couple of titles. The first is the Honorable Raymond Kemp, because I was appointed by the President to the American Battle Monuments Commission, and I'm a commissioner there. Okay. But before that, I served in the United States Navy just over 3 decades, 33 years, where I was the Fleet Master Chief. And then for your listeners who may not know what a Fleet Master Chief is, if you could just imagine merging the CTO, the human resource, that's the Chief Technical Officer, the Human Resource Officer, and the Chief Operating Officer into one person. I was that person for the U.S. Naval Forces in Europe and in Africa.
Wow. So Fleet Master Chief. I love that. I love that. It just rolls off the tongue when you say it, not so much so when I say it. So tell me a little bit more about that. So explain to me, I understand that it's kind of a combination of Chief Technical Officer, Chief Operating Officer, and Chief HR Officer, which is a lot of responsibility. Yes?
Sure.
And so how many people then did you have the opportunity to lead in this time?
Sure. So if you think about it like this, the Naval Forces Europe and Africa is not just sailors and Marines, but also civilians as well. So it's just about 60,000 people. Okay. The continent of Europe, continent of Africa, and the surrounding water. Mm-hmm. During the time that I was there from 2016 to 2019, it was a combative environment. They used to call us the fighting fleet because there were more armament that was fired from the Eastern Mediterranean, which was my area, than any other place in the world during the time. But the importance of that, and that was a culmination of my career. So I started, as the poet said, I started it from the bottom, but now I'm here. So I started at the absolute basic entry level, and then made my way into that position through various forms of leadership. Okay. And so, bit of a transit, from, zero to that particular position, but the honor of my life to have served in the world's finest Navy.
I love that. I love the pride that you exude when you talk about your experience in the military. It's comforting, right? And thank you for your service. I want to say that publicly.
Thank you. I appreciate your support.
And thank you for the work that you are still doing even now.
Yes.
So, so now we understand a little bit about the military side of you.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit more. So from a mental wealth perspective, I know that family is a lot of times a mental wealth deposit for family members or people. So talk to us a little bit about your family situation. We want to know more about you and who you are.
Sure. So I have 4 children, 3 girls and a boy, and 3 grandchildren. I have this brand new granddaughter. Yay. I'm so speaking of a mental wealth deposit, I'm talking about big time deposit. Mm-hmm. Every photo, she just turned 3 months old, and I got the 3-month-old photos the other day. And so, oh my goodness, my chest is filled with excitement because the responsibility of grandfathering is a little different than the responsibility of fathering. And so that's one of the places where I get my biggest deposit. The other, my children live in the DC area, one in Houston and one down in New Orleans. But I'm from, I was born in the great nation of Texas, raised in Oklahoma.
The great nation of Texas.
Indeed.
Please don't miss that. The great nation of Texas is where he was born.
That's so funny. And I have a family that's up in Oklahoma. And so I spend a good amount of time, hopping up the road and hanging out with those folks.
Awesome. All right. Well, then I understand that you also have some background in one of my favorite areas, technology.
Very true.
So talk to me a little bit, or tell us a little bit about your experience working in technology, whether it was in the private sector or in the military. Tell us a little bit about who you are in that space.
Sure. So I started the Navy as what we would now call the information systems technician. And in the Navy, because we're a self-sustaining organization, that means that on an aircraft carrier, that I can't just run to the Best Buy or some techno store, or, hit up Amazon and say, ship me some stuff overnight. We have to repair it ourselves. And because there's a limited amount of space on the ship, that means that we're oftentimes tasked with being able to do various different functions within that space. And so for me, it means that I started as a data entry person in the very beginning. We had the opportunity to break into the micro, macro computer space. I stayed macro, big computers for a while, and then I went into micro computers, but also frequency management, as well as I was a wire dog for a while, pulling wires either through a ship or through a field, because I did a lot of ground pounding. And then ultimately, it was overseeing the network on board a large platform ship.
Got it. Wow. That's pretty significant.
A lot of people too. And I didn't mention the folks. So at that time, there were probably 150 or so sailors and Marines that were responsible for our gear.
Wow. That's leadership for sure. It's not two people. I've run across people with these significant titles, vice president of something with 0 direct reports. And so they have a leadership title, but not necessarily the experience.
Sure.
And so my next question is, tell me something that you're passionate about. I was going to assume that it's likely leadership. But tell us what you're passionate about. I know that you have a lot of experience and a lot of things. So what are you the most passionate about right now?
You're right. I'm most passionate about leadership. My thought is, and it's really kind of simple, I just want to change the world. I just want to change the world.
Is that all? That's it?
That's right.
Okay.
I think with the appropriate amount of leadership, we can change the world from the workplace outward. And so if you could imagine going into work and being treated with a high level of dignity and respect, your ideas being honored, who you are as a person being honored, that just be the normal function within the workplace. What will happen is that people will take that same feeling into their homes, and they'll treat their family members the same way, out into the community, and in that way we change the world, which is why leadership is what I'm most passionate about.
I love that. And I agree wholeheartedly. I think the more people that take onus for leadership, even if it's not in their title, even if it's not a part of their job description, I think we all have the opportunity to be leaders. And I love that you teach that in everything that you do. So that's pretty dope.
Thank
I like
you.
it.
Thank you very much.
All right. So the last question that we'll ask before we go to a quick break is, you're probably best known for what? Tell me what you're probably, if people say Raymond D. Kemp, the Honorable, he is X, what would that word be?
A motivator. Throughout my career, that I was known for getting people on their feet, pressing into something hard, something that they may not most likely do without someone like me encouraging them to do so.
I love that. Awesome. Well, we'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back at the Creating Mental Wealth Show. Welcome back. We are in studio at the Creating Mental Wealth Show today with the Honorable Raymond D. Kemp, and we're talking about some of his experience in leadership. More specifically right now, we were talking about the things that he's most passionate about. So you were saying, obviously, you're passionate about leadership, and I see that in everything that you do and where you speak. So this is a kind of a trick question, right? Because on our show, we talk about what creates mental wealth and how mental wealth doesn't always lead to financial wealth and vice versa. So we know you're passionate about leadership. Tell us about how you make most of your money. Is it in working in your passion?
It is. So through keynote speeches and executive coaching is where I make most of my money. And I will admit, there is a measure of fulfillment and satisfaction in teaching, coaching, creating an environment of growth, and empowering people to do things. And the fact that there is money that goes along with that, creates a measure of satisfaction for me as well. Not that I want to, because it's really not a money grab for me, but what it is an opportunity to impact and influence hearts and minds. And I think that's just super important. And that, to me, that's a mental wealth deposit for me.
I love that. And I love that you said hearts and minds. I think a lot of people who are in leadership are focused on everything except the hearts and minds, right? They're talking about productivity. They want to talk about attrition, things stakeholder management, and hearts and minds of the human aspect sometimes gets lost.
Right. And we can intentionally be making mental wealth deposits in the folks that we work with. And I think that's just super important. It's incumbent upon leaders to do more than just ensure that the job gets done. We should be building people in such a way where they are better citizens, not just of our organization, but also of the world.
I love that. And I love that you use your influence to teach folks who may not know better, right? Sometimes the folks that don't know better are people that should know better. And so I know that you have a very diverse set of experiences.
Right.
So you've met some influential people. So who would you say is the most influential person that you've ever met? And then tell us why.
Most influential. What an interesting question. So, while I served in the Navy, it just so happens that I met every president from Ronald Reagan to Barack Obama.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I might have missed that. Say that one more time.
Absolutely. Every president from Ronald Reagan to Barack Obama either shook their hand, because I was the Armed Forces Inauguration Committee member for President Obama. So I met him several times, enough for him to look at me and say, I know you from somewhere, but I don't know your name, so I'm not going to try it. Nice. Or just been in the room with George Herbert Walker Bush when he was getting his final award before he transitioned out of office. But I would say the most influential person I met, or the person who had the largest impact on me, if I could just change my the trajectory of the question, that person who had the most impact on me was this young guy I met in Thailand.
Okay.
So we were doing something just super duper duper hard in a field, and he was the person that was responsible for bringing out the meals. Mm-hmm. And he had this huge ox, and he'd lead the ox out to us into the field area where we were. But he was the most consistent and the most on-time person I'd ever come across.
Wow.
He, without a watch or anything, think it was almost like a first world environment where we had the technology, but he didn't. Mm-hmm. But he was on time every day. I have no idea how, but what I do know is that it was so important for him to get his job done, which was to bring meals to us and ensure that we had the things that we needed in the field, mm-hmm. non-technical things, of course. He was very passionate about that, and that had an impact on me, because I thought, if he, without the benefit of technology, can be that focused and that intentional, that timely, surely I can do the same. And so his name is too hard for me to pronounce from my memory. Mm-hmm. But it was I would say, is the person who influenced me probably the most.
That's awesome. And it's interesting that sometimes it's not the people that we think are going to be the most influential in our lives, right? So, I know that we have another friend in common, in Simon Sinek.
Yes.
And so, because I was going to ask you, why was that person more influential, but you've already covered that. But then let's talk a little bit about, starting with why.
Sure.
And that's something that before you and I met, I've been talking about a lot, is the time that I met Simon Sinek and how he kind of helped me course correct years and years ago when we were in San Diego speaking at an event. So I'd like to know, your why and your why statement.
Okay.
And then tell us a little bit about the work that you do in that space before we head to the next break.
Sure. Start with the book. Start with why. I read the book before I saw the TEDx talk or the TED talk. For those of you who may not have read the book, it is a book written by a middle-aged guy, written to other middle-aged guy, how to communicate with millennials, which I think is really interesting. But starting with why is a technique that I believed in even before I read the book, and then I began to practice it because I had words for it. Mm-hmm. He met a man by the name of Dr. Gary Sanchez. They worked together, and Dr. Sanchez created the Why Institute, where I'm a coach. And in the Why Institute, we believe that there are 9 whys, and everyone has these 9. And if we order them, if we put them in order 1, 2, and 3, their why operating system is what we would identify as the top 3. So my why, how, and what are better way, challenge, and contribute. Okay. My why statement, therefore, is success to me happens when I'm able to find a better way, share it with other people. How I do this is by challenging the status quo and traditional thinking. Ultimately, what I bring to every relationship is a contribution to make that person and or organization better.
I love that. That is so eloquently stated. I love that. I did practice my why statement, and I did not do it at all like that. So I'm not going to even try. But I like that you're connecting, and you're working as a why coach, right? Mm-hmm. And so from a leadership perspective, I think some C-suite executives don't know their why.
Right.
And if they do know their why, they don't have a way to effectively communicate that to their direct reports, their peers, their even those that they report to. Right.
Sure. The value of having knowing your why statement is that it keeps from creating space where you have to allow your reputation to precede you or someone else to vouch for you. Mm-hmm. If you can just say with clarity to someone, I'm looking for a better way. I'm going to ask questions on what you've done in the past, but I'm doing it so that I can help make things better. That just creates a different space.
I believe that. Now tell me about, so I'm going to stay on this topic for a little, we'll talk about this when we come back from the break. How about that?
Okay.
So when we get back from break, I do want to discuss a little bit more about the work that you're doing right now, how we can support you, how we can find you. So we'll talk about that when we get back.
Sure.
So I hope you guys can stay with us. We're looking forward to seeing you on the next section and the next segment of the Creating Mental Wealth Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the Creating Mental Wealth Show. And today in studio, we are blessed with the Honorable Raymond D. Kemp. So our last segment, we talked a little bit about the work that you did with Simon Sinek and your work as a why coach.
Right.
And so I love your why, by the way. I'm going to work on perfecting my why statement so that I can do it. I'm working on it. So tell me a little bit, like, we know that you're an amazing person of the military. We know that you've got some technology background. We know that you do some consulting, right? But tell me more about the consulting, because I want to know, how can we have our listeners engage with you? If someone says, man, I got a chance to hear him on the show. Tell me about the services that you offer other than keynotes. So I know that keynotes is something that's really key for you.
Right.
No pun intended. Kind of. So tell me a little bit more about other services that you offer at Kemp Solutions.
Sure. So we do keynote speeches, yes. We also do leadership coaching, usually at the executive level, and we also offer training. Okay. So there's several packages in the training curriculum to include having those crucial conversations, as well as communicating across the generational gap. And do you really want to be a leader?
Wait a minute. I feel like we need to offer this on a regular. Do you really want this? Like, can we talk about that just for a little bit? Like, tell me more about that course.
There's so many people who think that, as a leader transition, let's say to a new higher position, mm-hmm. or you are onboarding someone into a leadership position within their organization. A lot of times they say that they want that higher position, perhaps driven by resources, mm-hmm. or they think that's just a natural progression of, there's a ring above me, I should jump up and grab it. But do you really want that position? And that's one of the places where we insert the why discovery, so people can discover truly, okay, is that what you really want, or did you just found yourself in the sameness of our mind? And so, yes, that's one of my favorite courses to teach.
I'd love to be an audience member in that, especially to see how it applies to mental wealth, right?
Absolutely.
Because to your point, people believe that once I make it to this next level, whether it's socioeconomic status or rank or title, people believe that I will be happy as soon as right. ... right? And I think a lot of people can be disillusioned by that. are not aware of the challenges that come with being in leadership.
Absolutely.
And so if you don't mind, let's spend like a minute talking about some of the challenges that you've encountered being a leader or coming up quickly as a leader and how you handle that.
Well, I don't know much about coming up quickly because it was a slow mover for me. However, as a leader, I have had the opportunity to bring up leaders who did get there quickly. And one of the most important things that folks need to know as they're leading others is that it's important to express a measure of care for other people because they just function differently when they understand that the why we talked about before is important. But something that is not often taught is that self-awareness, knowing that you have empathy towards yourself, realizing that you may not have all the answers, the modesty, humility, and the transparency to say, I don't know, and figuring out new ways to do that. And super quickly, one of the things I used to do is stand in front of my crew on an aircraft carrier, 5,000 people total, so maybe there's 3,000 at an assembly. And so I'm standing in front of them, and I would love to ask any question, any topic. I'm prepared. Let's go. And people would ask me something I didn't know, and I'm like, man, I don't even know. But I'll race you. I'll race you. We'll see who can find it first. And that way I don't feel bad about not knowing. That was my own measure of self-care and ensuring that my mental wealth was locked in.
I love that. Right. Cool.
Power.
Awesome response. I love it. All right. So I love the work that you're doing. We're going to make sure that we put up your website. So kemp-solutions.com is where we can find you and hire you. We can also see some of your other keynotes there. Yes.
There are more podcast clips there than video, but they're coming soon.
Okay. I love it. All right. So now I get to ask you some hard questions. Dun, dun, dun.
Always ready. Let's go.
All right. Let's see. All right. So this is my off the cuff section.
Okay.
So I want to talk about mental wealth withdrawals from a leadership perspective, and not that we're going to end on a bad note.
Sure.
But I want to talk about how you have had the opportunity to take a mental wealth withdrawal and turn it into a mental wealth deposit.
Okay.
The last time you've done it, and then tell us how that turned out, and then you have the rest of the show for that.
Okay. So one very unexpected withdrawal was a technological failure in that there was technology in place that I was supposed to be using and had been assured it was going to work. I was in Los Angeles, teaching a group of folks at the LA County Department of Health Services, and none of the technology worked. I mean, zero.
Oh, no.
And so as we're coming up, I get there an hour early. We're coming up on 15 minutes to go time. And the screen had finally come up, but my laptop wouldn't work or anything. And so as I began to think, okay, well, how do I function without this piece of technology as I'm teaching a course without handouts? I thought, okay, I know what to do. And so as I began to prepare, another person came in. We found a way to get my slides to project, and it ended up working out okay. But the thing is, the withdrawal, the pressure that came with what if this doesn't work? And then the audience, the people who had begun to show up and who were there early were seeing this failure in technology. I could just see the energy, just kind of everyone was feeling some measure of a withdrawal. But the way I was able to turn that into a deposit was to just truly celebrate the administrative person who came in with the solution, and to lift her up and to express what it means to be agile when it comes down to the what if, and then the importance of being able to shift and transition and pivot as a leader, crucial, and in another course, we talk about the importance of surrounding yourself by people who are not just competent within their skill set, but also willing to help others. But thankfully, I had one of those people there with me. I didn't even know it, was able to lift and celebrate her in a way that none of her peers had ever seen. So it ended up being a deposit for her, a deposit for them. Technology worked, a deposit for me. So it was a win-win, if I may.
A win-win-win. Yes, that's what we're working on. Win-win-win. Everybody's winning.
Everybody.
And everybody, that's like an interest-bearing activity, right? Because everybody got a little piece of knowledge, and they got to learn from the Honorable Raymond Kemp.
Thank you so much.
So I just want to remind you guys that the reason that we do the work that we do is because so many people are struggling with their mental wealth bank accounts. And we work to make sure that you have access to great leaders in our community, like Commissioner Kemp, so that you can see that it happens. We all struggle. We all have mental wealth withdrawals, but we also have the tools that are necessary to create our mental wealth. So until next time, we will see you when we see you. Bye.